Hi, I'm Felipa, and today is day 81 of 365 days of reading this Bible. I'm in the last section of Kings, and we start here with chapter 22. During Josiah's good reign over Judah, the book of the law is found. So we've got Ammon, who is reigning over Judah beforehand, and then his son Josiah ends up being made king. And he was 8 years old when he began to reign. And he says that he walked in the way of David his father and turned not aside to the right hand or to the left, but kept on in God's way. It says that he spoke to Shaphan, the son of Azaliah, the son of Meshullam, the scribe, to the house of the Lord. And he says, go up to Hilkiah, the high priest, talk to him about giving the money of the house of God's house towards carpenters and builders and masons to repair the breaches of the house. And then it says here that Hilkiah, the high priest, said unto Shaphan the scribe that he found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan, and he read it, and then he brought it to Josiah the king. And because Josiah was already following in the law of the Lord, he read this book, and he wanted to continue reading into it. And so then he sends a bunch of these people to go into the propheters and the prophetess and to see what God has to say. And he says essentially here in verse 16, it says, thus saith the Lord, behold, I will bring evil upon this place and upon the inhabitants thereof, even all the words of the book which the king of Judah hath read, because they have forsaken me and have burned incense unto other gods, that they might provoke me to anger with all the works of their hands. Therefore my wrath shall be kindled against this place and shall not be. So it kind of doesn't matter that Josiah has good reign over Judah, because God has reached his limit and he is upset, and he says he will destroy everything in front of him. So Josiah ends up reading the book of the law in an assembly to the inhabitants, to the men of Judah and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And he talks about the need to walk after the Lord, keep in his commandments, follow his statutes and his testimonies, and everything that's written in the book. And then Josiah goes on this massive rampage of literally killing all the priests in the high places that shouldn't have been put there in the first place. All of the graven images, all of the fake gods, all of the altars and places of worship, and all of the everything that is associated with anything but God. And it's really interesting, because I was kind of thinking, like, even though this is the Bible and we're talking about one God, it's interesting to think about other people, other believers, believing in a God of their own and holding such a firm faith over their own God, that I can imagine it was horrific for them when they were being destroyed, and all of the things associated to their God were being destroyed, just essentially, perhaps maybe because they didn't know any better, or because, humans, right? We have flaws. And then it says here at the very end that the Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went up against the king of Assyria to the river Euphrates, and King Josiah went against him, and he was killed, and he was buried in a sepulcher. And then he had a son, Jehoahaz, who took reign. He was very evil. There was also, I believe here, another brother, who was said Eliakim, the son of Josiah, king and he turns his name to Jehoiakim, and he takes Jehoahaz away, and he gives Jehoiakim essentially power over Jerusalem, and he also does evil. So it ends up saying here that Jehoiakim was subdued by Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, so the king of Babylon, and essentially the king of Babylon ends up coming in, destroying everything of Judah and Israel and Jerusalem, and he ends up taking all of the things out of there, all of the gold, all of the silver, everything that was made in the house of the Lord. And it even says that he carried away Jehoiakim, and the king's mother, and the king's wives, and the officers, and all the mighty men, even the craftsmen and the smiths and everything. And the only people that were left were kind of like the poorest of the poor people in the land. And this is essentially where we leave this part. We have here in verse 21, it says, "And the king of Babylon smote them and slew them at Riblah in the land of Hamath. So Judah was carried away out of their land." And then we have Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, left. Even over them he made Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, ruler. And there was some sort of like an agreement that there was going to be peace to some of the people that got left in the land, but everybody essentially ended up getting killed. And it says, "All the people, both small and great, and the captains of the armies arose and came to Egypt, for they were afraid of the Chaldees." And so, yeah, essentially people end up going and fleeing to Egypt because all of their people are destroyed. So this is where we end Kings, and essentially everything that up to this time was built for the people of Israel and the Promised Land has now been absolutely destroyed. So it'll be interesting to see where we go when I start the first book of Chronicles, starting with the genealogy of Adam's descendants, and I start that tomorrow. Thank you for listening.